All right, let's move on here. Airline stocks joining the rally on Wall Street today. Check out the moves of the major carriers. JetBlue, American, United, Delta, Southwest, all soaring today. The optimism fueled by a tweet from President Trump calling for an immediate $25 billion stimulus package for the airline sector. Let's bring in Helene Becker, senior transportation analyst at Cowen. She joins us on the fast lane line. Helene, always great to speak with you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Melissa.
This $25 billion in stimulus money to the airlines, it would specifically be for payrolls. And you had said, according to my notes, that it would be nice. I mean, in what way? In that the airlines don't necessarily need it, that perhaps they should actually go forward and cut jobs because that is probably what they need to eventually do?
Yeah. So you take very good notes. So what I've said in the past was I didn't think there was much appetite in Washington for a second stimulus plan. And I still am not convinced that there's a lot of appetite. I know everybody has said, they're supportive of it, but what are they going to say when labor comes to Washington and asks for help? And, for airlines, Allegiant, Southwest, Delta, and Spirit did not take the second loan. The money that was made available on September 30th that goes through March of 2021. And so there is money that's on the table that can be reallocated to the airlines that need it. But, and it's cheap money, right, because the government will loan the money to the airlines at a far lower cost than they're going to go out and, especially American, will go out and borrow in the marketplace. But to your point, at some level, we have to acknowledge the fact that we're 65% of where we were, 70% of where we were a year ago. And, what I said this morning to our sales force is that we're flying 900,000 people a day on weekends and holidays. We think we'll be at 1 million by year-end for the year-end holidays. That's leisure traffic back. That's visiting friends and relatives and pretty good leisure. What's missing is business and international. And business isn't coming back until companies figure out how to go back to work and how to receive visitors. And international is not coming back until countries open their borders. So it's not that people don't want to fly. It's that their governments aren't letting them fly. And from the airline perspective, if you're flying the number of people you were flying 35 or 40 years ago, then you need to figure out how to size your airline for maybe not 35 or 40 years ago, because I think there's a lot of pent-up demand, and I think by 2023, 2024, we'll be in a pretty good spot. And there's a whole lot, we don't have time to talk about the whole lot of issues they have with if they let pilots go and it takes a year to retrain them, and then you have, all these pilots retiring. About a year ago, United said they were going to hire 10,000 pilots over the 2020-2030 timeframe. And you can bet American and Delta were going to hire at least as many. And, now they're begging their pilots to retire early so they don't have to let the junior pilots go because it'll take a year to retrain them. So much going on. And, I think in the end, you can send as much money down the airline's way, but you're talking about $70 billion balance sheets and $15 billion in revenue. And at some level, that's not going to work out long-term very well for anybody.
Ladies, Karen, thanks for being on. I know you're very experienced in the space and seen a bunch of cycles and bankruptcies and rebuilding to, what were peak years just a year ago. Do you think, though, that the law of the jungle should sort of apply and that the government should not lend to this specific industry over others and let the chips fall where they may? And if that's on the equity, so be it.
Yeah. Hi, Karen. Thanks for the question. So here's how I'm thinking about that. Nobody misses Pan Am, TWA, and Eastern Airlines. I mean, most people don't even remember them. American, Delta, and United absorbed all their routes very nicely. Thank you very much. And I think at this point, frankly, a bankruptcy filing for any one of these airlines would mean a liquidation. I don't think it would be too easy to restructure the airline. Do I think the government should let the airlines fail? Probably not, only because, the airline industry, travel and tourism is 5% of GDP. And every one airline job creates 13 jobs in the United States behind it. And that's, across the board. That's airport workers, rideshare people, restaurants, hotels. Such an ecosystem that it's a hard thing to destroy. And so I think they should be supportive, but, I suppose they should be supportive where it makes sense. I'm not sure. Like I said before, I think the industry needs to figure out what it should look like. There are a lot of, we've done 10 years worth of aircraft retirement in 6 months. We didn't do very many aircraft retirements in the last 5 or 7 years. As Karen, you pointed out, the airlines were having, great years and doing well. But that's all got to change if we're going to have a successful, economy. You need a successful airline industry to have a successful economy, and that needs to get done.
So, Helene,
yes, ma'am.
Assuming that Speaker Pelosi and President Trump are listening to this program this evening, what would you say to them? Don't spend that $25 billion on this industry right now.
Yeah, I probably would say, think about how you really want to spend $25 billion, and maybe now it's not the exact right time to do it.
All right. Helene, always great to get your take. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Helene Becker of Cowen. And by the way, I was in Squawk on the Street this morning and spoke to Jamie Baker of JP Morgan, who is another airline analyst, and he basically said the same thing, Tim. It is amazing that these airline analysts, with the insight into the industry, are willing to say, you know what, this money will not be well spent because the airlines need to do a little bit of belt tightening, according to this new reality that we live in.
Yeah, and if you look at Delta, who's going to report next week, the numbers are something like revenues down 70% for the third quarter and expenses down only 50%. And I realize there are fixed expenses that they can't cut back on, but I would fall in line as well, and far be it for me to argue with the airline analysts, but to the extent that I'm not, this money to me is more about politics. This is not me casting insensitivity over job loss. This is me. We're looking at the airline industry and we're trying to understand the health of the industry and how money should be allocated. Ultimately, though, yesterday's trade in the airlines was really painful. The question is, what do you want to do today for tomorrow? And if you look at a company like Delta, they have more than enough liquidity to get through here. And if you listen to Helene, who's obviously a very experienced senior analyst, one of the top in her profession, she's looking at Delta out 2 to 3 years and trying to discount back. And what's the number you put on it? And I believe she's got a $36 share price. But ultimately, that's the trade with airlines, are the ones that are going to be here on the other side that don't have to raise debt that will be dilutive and, in fact, could be unsecured, and those that can control their own destiny.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.